AI in gaming always creates visceral reactions across the industry on social media. Most of them, I would say, are negative, and they're instantly negative as soon as anything for AI is announced. And there are some good reasons to be negative on AI. I think the major thing that happens across game developers and the journalists and everything is that there will be job losses as we move forward, as it has been happening over the last 2 years or so, in significant ways once AI starts to really ramp up within the games industry. It's just as simple as that. People are going to lose their jobs, and that is always a negative, sad thing for the people that do lose their jobs. But I think the reason is because AI is going to be able to complete a lot of the monotonous, busy work style of development and do it at a such faster pace than humans can do it, which will allow games to be developed faster and for companies to make more money by not spending an extra year or however long in development of games. Now, we just got the announcement of Xbox Muse, or Muse AI, that is going to be Xbox's system that will be using generative AI over looking at many models over a long time, being able to replicate player reactions and things like that. They're using bleeding edge. It is actually quite interesting what they are able to do with this thing. It looks like they are going full out with this thing, and you've seen tons of negative reactions and pushback against it. In fact, there's an article published by Wired, which we will also go over, with a lot of people, a lot of developers, some stayed anonymous, some didn't, and their reactions to this. And it's extremely negative. Nobody, it seems like, in the game development world wants this for either good reasons or bad reasons. They just don't want it in there. They don't believe it is going to help gaming whatsoever. But we do have this here, Satya Nadella, who is only looking at the bottom line. If there's one guy there that just cares about the bottom line here, he probably doesn't really care too much about gamers, or he says he's all in on gaming, but who knows whether he actually cares that much about gaming other than seeing it as dollar signs. That's kind of what I think about whenever Satya does come out and speak about Xbox. He says here that they're going to be able to use Muse, their AI mode, and they're planning to have a catalog of video games that do utilize this new generative AI. So again, as soon as this was announced, you saw a lot of pushback, but it says here, so commenting on Muse in an interview published this week, he compared Muse to the wow moments he said he felt when he first saw other generative AI models such as ChatGPT. And according to Nadella, Microsoft is already planning to utilize generative AI in multiple games. Specifically here saying, it's just very cool. One thing that we wanted to go after was using gameplay data. Can you actually generate games that are both consistent and then have the ability to generate the diversity of what the game represents, and then are persistent to users' mods, right? So that's what this is. He says, the cool thing is that what I'm excited about is we're going to have a catalog of games soon that we will start using these models, or we're going to train these models to generate and then start playing them. In fact, when Phil Spencer first showed it to me, where he had an Xbox controller and this model basically took the input and generated the output based on the input, and it was consistent with the game. And that to me is massive, a massive moment of wow. It's kind of like the first time we saw ChatGPT, complete sentences or Dolby Draw or Sora. This is a kind of one such moment. So they are seemingly at this point are extremely impressed by this Muse AI and are all in. Now, I think AI, and I've talked about this on my channel previously, can actually really make games more immersive for the gamers in some shape or form. I think there's some really good stuff that could come out of AI, and it is actually exciting as a gamer myself to think about how they would be able to utilize this within worlds with a lot of NPCs and making those NPCs more engaging than we've ever experienced in video games. Because even right now, you go into open world games and NPCs are generally relatively the same. There isn't a huge variance, and to me, I'm assuming it's because humans have to go in there and program those NPCs, program lines for those NPCs to say in the way that they do react. And if you wanted every single one to be different, that would take so much time to do that obviously they don't. They copy and paste a lot of that across the different NPCs in the world. But if I could come in here and do it for you, save all of the time, and then just make these far more immersive, more living worlds in video games, to me, that is something that would be huge and make video games overall better. Now, the thing here that I think worries a lot of people is how AI would take away the creativity of actually developing a game from beginning to end. Like if they start using AI for significant chunks of building these video games, then there could be major problems here and potentially take away from the overall quality of games that we are getting comparatively to today and games that we will be getting in the future. And we hear about some of these complaints in this article that was published by Wired. And it's pretty interesting because it's very negative, like extremely negative from the development world. It does seem like, or at least stuff that you're seeing online when it comes to potential of generative AI getting into video games. So we have this article here from Wired. As we know, this whole Muse thing was done with Xbox and Ninja Theory and using the multiplayer game Bleeding Edge, where Muse can actually understand physics in 3D environments inside of games and generate visuals and reactions to player movements. And one of the other things that was massive, I think, about this announcement was game preservation. If they can actually use it for game preservation, if it's not just kind of hype right now, not just corporate speak to reduce people's worries about the future of their catalogs going forward, then there could be some big wins there with AI. So that's basically what the announcement from Xbox was. But we have this here. This is a response from developers and the larger community online. It's been received very, very poorly. You have here the longtime game developer and founder of the development studio, The Outsiders, David Goldfarb, saying in response to the news, "F this shit." He says that because the people who are promoting it are doing it to reduce capital expenditure, and whether they intend to do it or not, are effectively disenfranchising and devaluing millions of collective years of aesthetic effort by game devs and artists. And the primary issue is that we are losing craft. Goldfarb continues and says, when we rely on this stuff, we are implicitly empowering a class of people who own these tools and don't give a F about how they reshape our lives. So one of the things he does mention here is, I think is the important thing here, and I think he's absolutely correct on this, is that they are excited about these technologies more because they want to reduce the capital expenditure with developing these games. I think that is the biggest thing here. When you hear Satya Nadella talking how he's seen the technology and how excited he is, I think the biggest thing that obviously in the back of his mind would be, we can save a lot of money if we implement this AI, and we could make a lot more money for the shareholders, and our financial reports will just be so much better when our margins are better and all of that stuff. That's what it comes down to at the end of the day. But the reality of the situation is that is kind of important right now if you're looking at what's happening in the gaming industry. If, let's say, we don't move in a way that can actually reduce the capital expenditures and reduce costs of developing these games in a way that will still give us some products and some good products to play, there's going to be layoffs regardless. I mean, we're seeing it happen over the last 2 years. The industry just cannot sustain itself on spending hundreds and hundreds of $millions to develop these games and spending all of these years on development and then flopping, these games flopping, and you're seeing what happens. Even flopping is like, how is it even defined in today's world in video games? A game can still sell relatively well to what we're used to, and there's still going to be layoffs because it has to sell even more than usual, because they've spent so much more money and so much more time in the development of it. And AI, I think, could come in here and just help with that and reduce the overall stress and reduce the overall layoffs that go on within gaming into the future. Yes, there will be layoffs from the AI itself, but if this never gets implemented, are we going to stop seeing layoffs? Is the industry just going to magically come back and everything is going to be okay in terms of the development costs and everything? I don't think so. I think there's something has to give here. Maybe, potentially, AI is that solution to reduce some of those capital expenditures and to reduce the overall cost of developing these games for the health of the industry in the long run. Now, we have some more developers that do weigh in here. In fact, and again, in this article, they do mention thousands of developers have been laid off over the past few years, which is a trend that is absolutely continuing this year. If you thought it was going to slow down in 2025, that isn't the case. We have this developer who wants to remain anonymous, saying it's classic issue of Xbox bleeding talent, but also so heavily invested in Gen AI that they can't see the forest for the trees. And they say they don't see that nobody will want this. They don't care that nobody will want this. Internal discussions about these sorts of things are quiet because everyone fears being against this and losing their jobs due to the tumultuous time in our industry. Again, people are losing their jobs regardless, whether you speak up against AI or not. And then there's another developer here that also wants to stay anonymous, saying, "It is gross that I feel I have to be anonymous because with the state of the game industry, I also still need to beg them for money for a Game Pass deal, and attaching my name would reduce my chances." And then they go on here to say, "It seems to me that the real target of this model is not game developers, but shareholders, to show that Microsoft is all in on AI, which has yet to deliver a product that anyone wants." And again, they go on here, Microsoft does, and says that they are creating real-time playable AI models. Now, again, those comments there, they're just anger. You could tell they're angry about this stuff, and they're worried about the future of their companies that they work for. They're worried about the future of their jobs because AI could come in here and take over some of the positions, maybe their position or positions of their friends. And that's completely reasonable to have that sort of reaction instantly when you see something like this announced. And the other thing I do agree with here is it is absolutely one of the biggest things that they're announcing this for is to show the shareholders. They're targeting the shareholders and getting them excited about this new technology that will help the company make more money. However, at the end of the day, again, as my original point, the industry right now isn't in a state of people keeping their jobs. People are losing their jobs. Even when you look at something like Marvel Rivals, the game just announced they had 40 million players, one of the most successful games to launch recently and to get into the multiplayer games as a service style game. And they still shut down a studio, or a bunch of people in Seattle still lost their jobs. So right now in the industry, there's obviously a ton of uncertainty that is going around. Now we also have the director at Creative Assembly, Mark Barrage, and he says here that computers can't draw the same knowledge from the process that humans can, and says prototyping is as much about the journey as the result, and you need to have been on it to get all of those learnings. Fast prototyping is a valuable skill. You can't just shortcut and think. You'll still be as prepared afterwards. And then you have with the Muse announcement, Microsoft here saying, "We believe it is important to shape how these new generative AI breakthroughs can support our industry and game creation community in a collaborative and responsible way." People are going to read that and think it's just corporate speak. They don't actually believe that themselves. They're just trying to reduce people's worries and fears, which you are seeing ramp up anytime anything about AI does get announced. This whole Muse AI thing is extremely fascinating because it is one we probably will actually see some results out of and see some games that utilize it and then determine for ourselves whether this is going to be good for gaming or bad for gaming. But the reality is, I think there are some positive things that AI can be used for. There will be continuous discussions about this, and the visceral reactions will continue to get bigger and bigger every single time more companies jump into this. AI is coming. You got to have to pretty much embrace it. It is here. It's continuing to grow, and it is going to reshape, I think, gaming in the future. And we're just yet to see the results of that and how that is going to be for us gamers. Will it make your games better? Will it make it worse? We don't truly know yet, but if it's used properly in step with humans and letting humans do the major creative processes of games, I think AI could do a lot here for the immersion of games that we do play in the future. But I'm going to end the video there, guys. Let me know your thoughts on this. Do you agree? Do you disagree? All that stuff. I would love to hear it. If you are new here, hit that subscribe, like the video as well. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.
Bye.